welcome back to Block TV, a special edition today as Facebook rolls out its much-awaited Libra blockchain project with the site Libra.org and its wallet, Calibra, going live. I'm joined in studio by Block TV's senior correspondent, Asher Westrup-Evans. Of course, and we cannot do this without him. Very happy to be joined also now by Nathaniel Whittemore, curator of Long Read Sunday, deep thinker in the crypto space. Nathaniel, lovely to have you with us in this early hour from the States. Before we start, gentlemen, I would love for us to see once again, Facebook launched, obviously, and Libra.org is out. There's also an explainer, which I think speaks volumes, that Facebook put out there. Let's have a look.
Remember when these were fast? And these? Technology has improved the world around us. So why is it simple to send one of these anywhere in an instant, but not money?
Bartering to shell, to gold, to money.
What if we made money truly global, stable, and secure? What if everyone was invited to the global economy with access to the same financial opportunities? Introducing Libra, a new global currency designed for the digital world, backed by the belief that money should be fast for Ope in Lagos, simple for Saul's family business in Manila, and secure for Betsabe when sending money home to Mexico City. It's powered by blockchain, making it safe and accessible, no matter who you are or where you're from. So join us as we move towards a world where money works for everyone. This is Libra, and it's just the beginning.
So that indeed is the Libra explainer by Facebook, launched by Facebook. We're joined live by Nathaniel Whittemore of Long Read Sunday right now from the States. Nathaniel, first of all, one of the reasons I wanted us all, including Asher, to watch that video again, because it's a masterpiece of marketing. It has global in it, it has stable, it has secure. There is very little mention of privacy. So first of all, let's start with the news broke. Your reaction, there we have it. Have you managed to read the white paper?
Yeah, no, of course not. I mean, I've skimmed it. Let's be real. It's been out for a couple hours. Well, I've been mostly, as always, I'm interested in people's reaction. So I've given some different parts of it a look. So I read the section on the reserve because that was particularly interesting to me.
Right.
But I mean, let's just start with the only possible reaction, which is holy crap, right? Like everyone was expecting this. Everyone knew what it was going to happen.
And we're still reacting exactly as they want us to react. I know. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is an actual huge moment, and I think that even if Libra flops and this becomes the beginning of a total, it becomes totally differently interpreted in the future. This is a seismic moment in not just our industry, but in terms of putting an awareness of money as a global consideration on the map. I mean, this is huge. So
no, Nathaniel, I not only do I tend to agree with you, I think we are yet to see even, because not just on our sphere, this is a game changer. This has the potential to be the game changer for banks, or what will be a bank in the near future, a game changer to the monetary system. We're yet to see, I think, the reaction of mainstream financial markets. It'll be fascinating to see it. Asher Westrup-Evans with me here. It is now, I think, it is 7? No, sorry, it is 8 p.m. 8 a.m. Eastern time. I think the markets will have quite a reaction to it, but down the line, needless to say, game changer entirely. Of the little things that you saw, I mean, and Asher went through the white paper, backed by a belief, and that's one of the things that fascinates me, Nathaniel, because it sounds like they're using all the buzzwords that evangelists of Bitcoin were marketing for years, okay? This is borderless. This is backed by an ideology almost. What is it though to you? When you read, the little that you know, what is it to you? Libra.
Well, I think what's worth noting is actually less the the buzzwords that they've kind of treaded on, and more, what are people surprised about? So this was interesting to see the reaction. So if you looked at, some of the folks who tend to be the most skeptical and the most critical were surprised to see a couple of things. One, they were surprised to see that the code is open source right from the beginning. So if you didn't want to deal with the Calibra wallet client, you likely won't have to. People were surprised to see that Facebook has something like only a 1% say in the decision making eventually. People were surprised to see that it acknowledged that it was a permission chain at the beginning, but that it was intending to be permissionless. I think maybe even by the time that mainnet launches in later this year or next year. So, there were a lot of things actually that I think ran counter to people's perspective. And to some extent, that's why I think everyone's racing to catch up and wrap their head around it, is that it isn't just actually a bunch of marketing buzzwords. There's some real unexpected decisions that they made that went into it, which is, at least for some people, going to give it more of a chance to see how the thing evolves.
How it evolves, that said, I think we spoke this morning to some people like the CCO of Bitrefill, who were very, judgmental, calling this new association. It's interesting it's an association and not a community. That's the one thing that sprung out to me, that it's basically a cartel. That it has all the big names behind it and it gives them massive power and whatnot. And I'm wondering if Usher is here, because he went through the white paper and I want him to read out again. He brought this to our attention. The thing that basically makes this sound like a reserve bank.
So in referring to the Libra Association, it's interesting. They say that, in quoting directly from the white paper, the association is the only party able to create, in brackets, mint, and destroy, in brackets, burn Libra. Coins are only minted when authorized resellers have purchased those coins from the association with fiat assets to fully back the new coins. Coins are only burned when the authorized resellers sell Libra coins to the association in exchange for the underlying assets. Again, you're giving a very limited permission to access and create and destroy Libra coins to this very select group of partners. And an interesting thing to point out as well in relation to that, sort of further on as we think about it, who these partners are so far. Of the 27 companies that started in this Libra association, we have no major banking partners, no major financial players. The banking sector is effectively being left out, and even though Facebook has said they'd be open to the possibility of them coming in, but also none of their major social media or tech competitors in terms of Google, Apple, Amazon, although that could be because those guys are all attempting to make some sort of comparative Apple Pay, their own sort of financial instruments as well. But interesting to see who's in, who's out, and how they plan to run this.
And how they plan to run this. Nathaniel, wondering with you though, doesn't that sound like first of all, what reactions are you expecting? I can't wait for your long read Sunday this week. But this is a mass amount of power of what to me sounded in the morning, and again, we're all catching up. And this is just, dropped, so to speak. And it's going to be a bombshell for at least the next 48 hours of the news cycle. But, that's a mass amount of power. Fine, not the buzzwords, but a mass amount of power. And not necessarily the original idea between what we all know to be, the Bitcoin ideology, right?
Sure. No, so listen, I think that to the extent that we're asking whether this is a worthy competitor or heir to Bitcoin or anything, of course the answer is no. There's no way that it was ever going to be that. Bitcoin was created with a fundamentally different idea in mind from the ground up. That, I would say that both of these, if you want to take these two projects in comparison, which I think everyone is going to do just because it's a natural comparison, the thing that they share is a fundamental attempt inherent in how they're designed to redistribute global power. For Bitcoin, that was redistributing it away from central banks and everyone who had printed money before, and towards this decentralized distributed network of validators. But really, Bitcoin vaporized power, right? It didn't just shift it around into a new place. It disrupted in a lot of ways, which I think is part of what makes it such a fascinating force. Now, Facebook's Libra is very, very different. It for sure changes the nature of power in the global system, but it doesn't vaporize it. It moves it to a new set of actors. And I think this, to me, one of the things that I'm still just wrapping my head around that makes this the most clear is that if you look at how they're reserved, how they discuss the reserve and how they set it up, so it's backed by, they're actually a set of assets behind it. and money has to go into that reserve as new Libra is created. And they're going to actually be managing that reserve and managing the value of that reserve by buying, other low risk assets, right?
Yep.
And so when you actually dig into it, this isn't just a stable coin or something that's pegged to a fiat currency like a lot of folks thought. It is literally buying sovereign debt. The reserve of these companies is going to be used to purchase government debt, which is a total shift in power. I mean, if you think about this, if you play this out and you imagine 1 billion people using this currency, which is actually asset backed, by eventually hundreds of partners who have millions of dollars, which adds up to billions of dollars, buying debt, you're talking officially then about a force that is more powerful than most states and most nations in the world. And it's interesting because we've had this kind of theoretical argument for a long time about whether some of these companies are as or more powerful than nation states. Well, now we're talking about money. And if you look throughout the history of the world, the power of nation states has always been or not in money and control of reserves. So I think that's the fascinating wrinkle in this. That is the most, we're the least able to predict what the implications are because we've never seen anything like it in the history of companies.
Well, I want to pick up on Nathaniel's point in that too. I mean, the standards for what is required for a sovereign state, one of the key standards is your own currency, your own financial, internal financial system. I'm sort of just waiting for the Libra Association to next issue passports, and then they'll really have the whole set laid out. I mean, really, they're not far off establishing the sovereign state of Libra if this goes ahead as envisioned in this white paper. When you play out, as Nathaniel said, this sort of what the next steps look like.
This is the game changer, though. This
exactly.
is it. Yeah.
I mean, when you are buying up that much sovereign debt from that many nations around the world with the potential purchasing power that this could look like. Again, we're playing it out as if it's a global success.
Theorizing, right?
But if it does go down that path, then realistically, the financial power that the association will have, and again, every time I say that phrase, it sounds darker and darker, the association will have is immense.
The association, my case in point, definitely not a...
And also, sorry, not democratic. Maybe corporate democracy, but certainly not democratic in terms of any sense of formal accountability to a public.
And indeed, those things will have to be addressed. Nathaniel, don't you agree? I mean, I was just reading bits of what Zuckerberg put out on Facebook. He actually stated he's got a little mini post today, it's quite long. But again, between him and David Marcus, who I think is the head of this blockchain not experiment anymore, major project for Facebook, privacy being used as a word, very much catering to the concerns of, the bulk of the population when it comes to Facebook, but at the end of the day, not discounting the fact that this is a game changer and a major power, a major force entering.
Yeah, I think that the important thing, so when we're discussing this new phenomenon, and I think it's almost better to call it that than anything else,
sure.
I think it's worth actually playing out some of the crazier scenarios and not just dismissing them as a wild kind of sci-fi speculation. So to go to Asher's point about passports, right? You already have Estonia issuing e-passports for kind of basically digital citizens who can set up businesses in Estonia and kind of work from there, right? The idea that something like that, that Facebook gets or Libra gets a consortium of governments to offer some sort of digital citizenship that can have partial access. Like these things actually aren't as far-fetched, especially because we're going into a world where increasingly nation states actually function more like a market relative to each other in the sense of competing for citizenship, competing for tax revenue. And I think that it's absolutely likely that as non-sovereign currencies become a bigger part of the global economy and the global political force, you're going to see nation states, potentially use that. Not so much the states that have big, powerful currencies, but the ones who don't are potentially going to think about what their leverage points are with things like that. So I think the point of all this is that if this degree of power is possible, we should, from the beginning, be taking a sort of an approach and an interest in accountability that is commensurate with that power. And so I think being aggressive about what the actual privacy considerations are, being aggressive about how they're held accountable, being aggressive about how that basket of reserves is invested, or at least transparency into it. I think all these things are incredibly important, right? I think that there has never been a more important time for consumer advocacy, for consumer watchdogs, for all of these groups, and not even necessarily just from the standpoint of people rooting for this to fail, but I think we need every type of kind of citizen and governmental watchdog on this situation, because we're in totally uncharted territory now. And I think that even the problem to me at core that we have to address is that even with every single actor involved in this project doing it with the best of intentions, the amount of money and power that's involved could have basically more power than them to determine how it's shaped. And so we kind of have to be prepared for that in every way possible. So
entirely, and look, I mean, there are antitrust concerns that are also being investigated already now when it comes to Facebook. So this is all interesting timing. And I agree with you, not to be just, not necessarily dystopian. It's moving, the world's moving digitally where it should move. I do think, though, that, the point that we're all making about the amount of power and the shifting of power, financial power, as we have now, the French finance minister, already asking for guarantees from Facebook of, what will be, he's trying to understand the scope of that currently non-sovereign currency. And that is a lot of responsibility on that social media giant. I agree with you, but transparency is up to us. It's up to us to request. It's up to us to actually demand as the process has just begun. Have I missed anything?
No, I mean, there's endless parts to talk about here. There's so much to happen in regards to whether we talk about regulation, when we talk about Nathaniel's key point there, that we are so close to this sort of, I also want to think about an inverse situation in which you actually have sovereign nations, particularly perhaps even smaller sovereign nations, one with less stable currencies, buying into Libra to be part of the association. What's to stop a government deciding they want to be part of the Libra association, joining in because their own currency back home is completely unstable and they want to take this on to get a more secure and stable currency?
If
I was Venezuela, I'd be looking at that as a pretty good idea to deal with issues of inflation.
As we heard earlier today. Nathaniel, I want to thank you for joining us today. Long Read Sunday, I'm assuming that you're already reading up for your next edition. At the beginning of the week. Final thoughts with us on this new morning? I think we lost Nathaniel, sadly, although I think he's excited. Thank you to Nathaniel Whittemore joining us today from the U.S. That was it. We'll be right back. And yes.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter